When I walked through the front door that Thursday evening, the house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something else. Something sharper. At first, I couldn't place it. Not right away. But it was there, clinging to the air like an afterthought. Martha was in the kitchen, back turned. The sleeves of her gray hoodie were pushed up around her elbows, and her hair hung wet down her back like she'd just stepped out of the shower. The kettle was screaming on the stove, steam curling up and fogging the window above the sink. It was ordinary, painfully, carefully ordinary. And yet, I knew something was wrong. I didn't walk in expecting anything out of the ordinary, but sometimes your body recognizes danger before your brain catches up. It's not always screaming and sirens. Sometimes it's something as simple as a smell. I dropped my bag by the door, like I always did. My keys landed in the little ceramic dish she insisted on buying when we moved in. White with blue trim, chipped on the side. Routine. Familiar. Safe. Except it wasn't. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "You just shower?" She didn't look back. "Yeah. Went for a run. Felt gross." That was new. She hated running. Once joked that she'd rather wrestle a goose than jog before 9 a.m. The most cardio she ever did was brisk walks with a podcast. I stepped closer, toward her, toward the scent. That sharp, distinct scent. Expensive. Not too heavy, not musky. Clean. I didn't recognize the brand, but I remembered it, because I'd smelled it before. Just once. At a hotel conference last year, when I was tagging along at one of Martha's work functions. The guy who wore it was her boss. Sharp suits, whiter teeth than seemed natural, the kind of man who always leaned in too close when he spoke. I remember the way Martha smiled at him, the laugh that lasted just a beat too long. I didn't think much of it at the time, just office politics, networking. But that cologne, that exact scent, was now here, in my house, on my wife. My stomach tightened before my mind caught up. I moved to hug her reflexively, not because I wanted affection but because I wanted proof. The moment I wrapped my arms around her, it hit me like static. The scent wasn't in the air. It was on her, in her sweatshirt, on her skin, her damp hair. Not mine. Definitely not mine. She stiffened in my arms. I pulled back just enough to look at her face. Her eyes flicked up to mine, scanning, calculating. It was less than a second, but it told me everything. Before I could ask, before I could even form the question, she jumped. "You're doing this again?" Her voice was sharper than I expected. Defensive. Loud. "You're seriously doing this right now?" "Doing what?" I asked, though I already knew where this was going. "This?" she snapped, gesturing vaguely between us. "This paranoia. This suspicion. It's exhausting, Mark. I'm exhausted." I blinked. I didn't say anything. "Yeah, but you didn't have to." She moved to the stove, clicked the burner off, and poured water into her mug with more force than necessary. "You get that look in your eye like I've done something wrong, like I'm constantly being judged in my own home." That caught me off guard. "I just walked in," I said slowly. "I hugged you, that's all." "Oh, come on." She's *T back. "Don't play innocent now. You were sniffing around like some bloodhound." "Because you smell different," I said, instantly regretting how it sounded. "Wow," she said, turning around, mug in hand. "So now we're doing that? Are you seriously accusing me of something because I used a different shampoo or walked past someone at the gym?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. I was still trying to understand the anger in her voice. It was fast, immediate, not confusion, not concern, not even hurt. Just rage. As if she'd been waiting for this moment. As if she had already rehearsed it. "I can't keep doing this, Mark," she said, voice trembling, but not from sadness. "Every time I take a shower, go for a run, wear something new, it's a problem. I can't breathe." Her eyes were shining, but there were no tears. Just performance. "Okay," I said quietly. "I didn't mean to upset you." She scoffed. "You never mean to, but you always do. You're obsessed with finding cracks that don't exist." I watched her as she spoke. Really watched. Noticed how her eyes never quite met mine. How she kept glancing past me, toward the hallway, toward her phone, maybe, or something else she was hiding. How long was the run? I asked suddenly. What? Your run? How long was it? She stared at me for a beat too long. 30 minutes. Maybe 40. I nodded slowly. That's why your hair's still wet? Yes, because I just got out of the shower. God, Mark, are you hearing yourself? I let out a small breath. Just trying to make sense of things. Well, maybe stop trying so hard, she snapped. Maybe accept that not everything's a conspiracy. I didn't say anything, because the truth was, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to accept that I was being paranoid, that maybe I had overreacted. But I couldn't, because the smell was real. It was right there. It wasn't gym sweat or body wash or walking through someone else's cologne cloud. It was on her. Deep, familiar, int asterisk mate. And the more she denied, the more certain I became. She walked past me then, still clutching her mug like a shield. Her footsteps were too fast, too heavy. I watched her disappear down the hallway, away from me, away from the confrontation. And maybe that was the part that hit hardest. Not the scent, not the defensiveness, not even the gaslighting, but the way she left the conversation. Like it didn't matter, like I wasn't even worth the lie. I stood in the kitchen alone, surrounded by the smell of citrus, steam, and something else I now couldn't ignore. My eyes wandered to the empty counter, to the phone that wasn't there, hers. She used to leave it charging here. Lately, it never left her side. And just like that, something shifted inside me. That line I'd drawn between insecurity and instinct, it snapped. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being paranoid. Something was wrong. And whether she admitted it or not, I had just stepped into the beginning of the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. Martha went to bed before me, or at least, she disappeared into the bedroom and closed the door. I stayed downstairs, pretending to watch the news, then flipping to reruns of shows I didn't care about. Anything to distract myself from what I was actually doing. Sitting in silence, replaying every moment from the last few months with fresh eyes. It's strange how clearly you can see the cracks once the first one finally splits wide open. The next morning, while brushing my teeth, I caught myself staring at our reflection, hers and mine, in the bathroom mirror. She was behind me, rushing to get ready, hairdryer in one hand, phone in the other. Her phone used to live on the kitchen counter while she showered or made breakfast. Now it was glued to her hand, like a lifeline. Big day, I asked through a mouthful of toothpaste. Huge, she said without looking up. Budget reviews. Client calls. Probably won't be home until late. I nodded. I didn't ask which client. I didn't ask what time late meant, because somewhere along the line, I'd stopped being part of those details. She used to talk my ear off about work. The drama, the meetings, the coworkers she couldn't stand. Her boss used to be a regular feature in those stories. The charming but overbearing type, she said. Way too flirty. She used to roll her eyes when she said it. But lately, she stopped mentioning him altogether. He vanished from conversation like a side character written out of a show. And now, all of a sudden, that cologne, his cologne, had shown up in my house, on her skin. It didn't take much for everything else to start clicking. Like the new outfits she started buying around February. More form-fitting, more expensive, nothing crazy, just subtle shifts. She claimed she was upgrading her look for work, which made sense, until she started wearing lipstick just to go on solo grocery runs. Or the sudden wellness kick she adopted: morning jogs, kale smoothies, protein shakes. Martha had once joked that running was for people being chased. Now she was training for a 10K? Please. I remembered a Tuesday morning 2 weeks ago. I was heading out early, and she was already dressed. In that deep green dress I'd never seen before. Tight around the waist. Makeup done. I raised an eyebrow and said, "You meeting a client or auditioning for a movie?" She laughed it off. "We're shooting promo #TS today." There were no #TS. I checked her company's site that weekend. Everyone had the same ones they'd had for the past 2 years. Then there was the phone, that damn phone. always face down, always with her, even when she went to the bathroom, even in the shower. I remember trying to hand it to her once when it buzzed and she wasn't in the room. She flew out of the bedroom like I was defusing a bomb. "It's just a reminder," she'd said, yanking it out of my hand. "Seriously, you need to stop being weird about my phone." I wasn't being weird. I was being lied to. But it wasn't just the obvious stuff. It was the more subtle erosion, the emotional distance, the way our conversations dried up, how she stopped asking about my day, how her goodnight kisses got quicker, colder, and then eventually stopped altogether. There used to be a comfort between us, the kind of comfort you don't even notice until it's gone. We used to cook dinner together, laugh at the same dumb TV shows, argue about the thermostat settings. Now it felt like I lived with a very polite stranger, one who occasionally borrowed my last name but didn't seem all that interested in keeping it. And yet, despite all of this, the moment that really hit me wasn't dramatic. It was small, stupid even. It was a Tuesday night, a few weeks ago. I come home early and suggested we go out for dinner. Just us. She barely looked up from her laptop and said, "I already ate." I asked, "With who?" She said, "Just grabbed something at work. I was starving." And then, 5 minutes later, she got up, walked to the kitchen, and made herself a salad. I didn't say anything at the time. I didn't want to fight, but I watched her, standing there in her work blouse and those gold earrings she rarely wore, and I thought, she's not just lying. She stopped caring if I notice. It wasn't a good lie. It wasn't even trying to be. And that was the scariest part. Because when someone stops putting effort into their lies, it means they've stopped putting effort into keeping you. There was another moment, one I had forgotten until just then. She was getting ready one morning, and I'd wrapped my arms around her waist from behind. I kissed her neck and said, "I miss you. We should take a weekend trip soon. Just the two of us." She didn't pull away exactly, but she went still. Her hands stopped moving. And then she said something I didn't understand at the time. "You don't really listen to me like he does." I blinked. "Who?" But she was already brushing past me, muttering, "Forget it." At the time, I figured she meant a coworker, some guy at the office she vented to during lunch. I thought maybe I'd been too distracted lately, too caught up in work. So I apologized, bought flowers that Friday, took her out to her favorite sushi place. She barely touched her food, spent most of the night on her phone under the table. Now, sitting in that quiet living room weeks later, I finally understood. He wasn't just anyone. He was someone she compared me to, and he had won. That realization didn't hit like a punch. It wasn't even a slap. It was more like ice water being poured slowly down my spine, because the truth wasn't just that she had feelings for someone else. The truth was that she had shifted. Emotionally, physically, habitually, and I had seen every sign, every blinking red warning light, and still held on to hope like it was some kind of shield. I don't know what I was trying to protect. My pride? My version of her? Maybe both. There was a time I would have blamed myself. Maybe I still do, a little. I mean, what kind of man doesn't notice his own wife slipping away? What kind of husband lets things get this far? But then again, how do you fight something invisible? How do you defend yourself against a war you weren't told you were part of? It doesn't start with cheating. That's not the first betrayal. It starts with a secret, then a smile that isn't for you, then laughter that rings different when she's texting someone else. It's a shift in gravity, a slow drift. By the time you realize you're not the center of her world anymore, she's already built a new one without you. And now I was standing in the ruins of something I thought was still standing. No proof, no confrontation, just a pattern, a trail of inconsistencies that no longer looked innocent under the light. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I didn't even know if I wanted to know more, because learning the truth means you can't unlearn it. You can't go back to pretending. You can't smile through it once you've seen the cracks, once you've felt them. But deep down, I knew I was already past the point of return. The trust was gone. The doubt was loud. And even though she hadn't said it out loud, I had already heard her answer in the silence between us. It was over. I just hadn't left yet. The message came in at 3:17 p.m. Right in the middle of a meeting I wasn't paying attention to anyway. My phone buzzed on the table, face up for once, and I glanced down expecting spam or a delivery notification. Instead, I saw a name I recognized immediately. Alex, the delivery guy. I'd used him dozens of times over the years. Reliable, quiet, never messed anything up. Until now. Hey man, I'm really sorry, the message read. I messed up the address today. I frowned. I hadn't ordered anything recently. At least not that I remembered. I typed back, "What address?" A few seconds passed. Then, "Your wife's old office building." I realized too late. I already apologized to her. My chest tightened. Martha hadn't worked at that office in months. They'd moved floors. New wing. New glass-heavy corner offices she was always vague about. Before I could respond, another message popped up. I took a photo for proof of delivery, like usual. Sending it here so you know I'm not lying. The image loaded slowly, pixel by pixel. I remember noticing stupid details first, the reflection on the glass wall, the angle, the lighting. It looked expensive, corporate, clean in that cold, impersonal way. And then I saw her. Martha was standing near the glass partition, half turned toward the camera, laughing. Not the polite laugh she used with me lately. The real one. Head tilted slightly, eyes soft, shoulders relaxed. She was holding a small bouquet, the one I apparently ordered without knowing. And next to her was him, her boss. He had one arm around her waist, fingers resting like they belonged there, like they'd been there 1,000 times before. His other hand was holding the flowers, angled toward her chest as if presenting them. He was leaning in close enough that their shoulders touched. Close enough that I knew exactly where that cologne had come from. I stared at the photo longer than I should have. Zoomed in once. Then again. There was no mistaking it. No awkward distance. No professional stiffness. Just familiarity. Comfort. Ownership. She wasn't pulling away. She was leaning in. I felt something in my chest go quiet. Not explode. Not shatter. Just stop. Like a machine finally shutting down after overheating for too long. Alex sent another message. Again, "I'm really sorry. I didn't know. If there's anything I can do." I didn't respond. I saved the photo. Then I emailed it to myself. Twice. One to my main account. One to a backup. I renamed the file with the date and time, like it was evidence. Because that's what it was now. Evidence. I closed my laptop and sat there, staring at the blank wall of my office. No anger yet. No sadness. Just clarity. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't intuition or paranoia or insecurity. This was a photograph. She came home that night like nothing had happened. Kissed me on the cheek. Asked if I'd eaten. Complained about traffic. The same routine. The same script. I watched her the entire time. The way she moved. The way she spoke. The ease with which she lied. Not with words, but with omission. With normalcy. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even flinch when she said she was exhausted and went to bed early. Because once you see the truth clearly, you don't need explanations anymore. You don't need excuses. You don't need to hear them lie again. You just need to remember exactly who they are and who they chose to be when they thought you'd never see. That photo didn't break my heart. It sealed it. And from that moment on, everything I did was deliberate. I waited until she left the next morning. She said she had a strategy briefing before 8, which was a phrase I'd never heard her use until the last couple of months. Now it came up often. Briefings, offsites, syncs, meetings that mysteriously never showed up on her shared calendar. I stood by the front window as she backed out of the driveway, sipping burnt coffee I didn't remember making. She didn't look back. Just drove off like she had every other day, as if nothing in the world was different. Except now I wasn't guessing anymore. I walked back through the house. Slow, careful, listening for nothing and hearing everything. The quiet was different now. It didn't feel like home. Felt like a set. Like props. Like I was walking through a place we used to live, not one we were living in. I opened the drawer in her old desk. The one she hadn't touched in months. It still smelled like her perfume, faintly. Back when she used to wear something floral, not sharp. The tablet was there, right where she left it. A dusty case, the screen faintly scratched. I remembered getting it for her birthday 3 years ago. Back when we gave each other gifts that actually meant something. She'd forgotten it existed. But I hadn't. And when I powered it on, I realized she hadn't even bothered to log out. No passcode. No security. Just a swipe and I was in. At first, I told myself I wouldn't dig. That I'd just look at the surface. See what apps were still installed. Maybe look at a few photos. But that lie barely lasted 30 seconds. Because the moment I opened her messaging app, the one she used for work stuff, I saw his name. Dozens of threads. Not just recent ones. Months of them. I scrolled slowly, each line hitting like a hammer. Thinking about you in that red dress again. Don't wear it unless you're ready to deal with the consequences. Lunch spots booked. Corner booth like always. You're my quiet, my peaceful island. That phrase came up more than once. Peaceful island. What a joke. He had a name I won't bother repeating. One of those white-collar names that screams LinkedIn and espresso machines. The kind of man who wears tailored suits and says things like synergy without irony. I used to joke about guys like him. Turns out one of them was sleeping with my wife. The tablet had location pins saved. Restaurants I'd never been to. A cabin in the hills, labeled Your Weekend. Hotel confirmations, complete with calendar reminders. There was even a playlist titled Meetings Winking Face, full of soft indie love songs and chill jazz tracks. It was like watching someone else's fantasy life, built in the shadows of mine. But what gutted me wasn't what she shared with him. It was what she said about me. I searched my own name out of curiosity just to see. Maybe I was looking for a hint of guilt, a mention of regret. Instead, I found a **T of a message I sent her 2 weeks ago. I love you, Martha. I know we've been off, but I'm willing to start over. Please. She had captioned it underneath. He's trying to play hero again, face with tears of joy. My chest went hollow. I read it again just to be sure. The man she married, the one she once said, felt like home, had become a punchline in a private chat. And it wasn't just once. There were other **TS. Messages I sent trying to fix things. To reconnect. To pull us back. She posted them all like jokes. Inside humor. Look at him trying so hard. At some point, I stopped feeling sad. I started feeling still. Cold. It was like some switch inside me flipped, and suddenly everything I used to beg for, I didn't want anymore. I forwarded the thread to myself. Every photo. Every message. I didn't do it out of anger or spite. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to remember. I wanted to keep record of the moment I stopped being blind. Because memory fades. And when people like Martha cry and say they were confused, or they didn't mean it, or they never stopped loving you, it helps to have the truth in writing. A printed, time-stamped reminder that love doesn't end with silence. It ends with contempt. I took a **T of the folder, then backed it up to a drive, then 2 more just in case. Not because I thought she'd come clean, but because I knew she wouldn't. I didn't hear her come home that night. I had headphones in, watching an old documentary I barely remembered queuing up. I listened to her move around the kitchen. Her keys dropped in the dish. Her voice on a call, soft, careful, too sweet to be normal. Probably him, or someone else she was venting to about how complicated things were. When she came into the room, she acted like everything was fine. I'm thinking Thai tomorrow, she said casually. From that place you like. I nodded without looking up. She smiled and left. I sat there with the image of her message still burned into the back of my eyes. He's trying to play hero again. She could order all the Thai food in the city. It wouldn't change what I'd seen. Some people cheat because they're lonely, or lost, or weak. But Martha? She cheated because she could. Because she was adored, and she didn't know what to do with it. So she burned it. That night, as she slept in the same bed we'd shared for nearly a decade, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering who she thought she was lying next to. She had no idea what I knew, and no clue that her game was already over. She just hadn't been told yet. After I backed up the files, every message, every photo, every trace of what she'd become, I didn't storm into the bedroom or throw the tablet at her feet or demand an explanation she wasn't prepared to give. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just waited. It's strange what you learn about yourself in moments like that. I always thought I'd lose it if something like this ever happened. I imagined chaos, accusations, rage. But when the time came, none of that showed up. Instead, I got clarity. Cold, focused, unnervingly calm clarity. She was cheating on me. That was a fact. No room for doubt, no gray area, no hope for confusion. And not just physically. She was cheating with words, with loyalty, with the truth. With her heart, her time, and her silence. But I wasn't going to play the game her way. While she kept messaging him on encrypted apps, hiding their hotel receipts in tucked-away folders, calling him my safe place behind my back, I made one move. One. Clean, quiet, calculated. Because while she thought I was breaking, I was building. I reached out to someone I'd only met once, a friend of a friend who worked in corporate compliance at her company. We'd been seated next to each other at a dinner years ago, the kind of gathering where no one remembers anyone's name afterward. But I remembered his, because he had once mentioned, half joking, "I know where all the skeletons are buried in that office." I emailed him at night, a short, formal message. I attached a folder. Nothing emotional. No sob stories. No personal rants. Just dates, receipts, names, the kind of cold documentation that HR departments don't ignore. A few hours later, he replied with one line, "Understood. Thanks for the heads up." 3 days passed. During those 3 days, Martha kept pretending everything was normal. She smiled more than usual, made us breakfast one morning, eggs and toast with a sprig of parsley like she was auditioning for forgiveness she didn't know I didn't need. She even asked if I wanted to plan a weekend trip. "Somewhere quiet," she said. I told her I'd think about it. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, it happened. She came home early, unannounced. Her face was pale. Her keys didn't jingle in the dish. She dropped them. I was in the kitchen, acting like I didn't already know. She didn't say hello. Just stood there like her legs had betrayed her. "Everything okay?" I asked. She blinked. They fired him." I didn't react. "What?" I said, playing dumb. "My boss," she choked out. "They just let him go, like out of nowhere. No warning. No thank you. Just an escort out of the building." I tilted my head. Weird. Wasn't he supposed to be up for a promotion? She nodded slowly. "Yeah." Then she sat down. And for the first time in a long time, she looked unsure of herself. Her voice didn't have that same false confidence. Her hands kept fidgeting. She wasn't texting anyone. Her phone stayed in her bag. I watched her fall apart one tick at a time. "Did they say why?" I asked. "No," she said. "Just something about a compliance review, financial records, travel expenses, company assets." I stirred my coffee. "Ha, that's wild." She nodded, eyes glazed. "It doesn't make sense." But it did. It made perfect sense. She didn't realize yet that the walls weren't just closing in on him. They were already surrounding her too. She just hadn't felt it yet. While she was sneaking out at lunch to sit across from him in restaurants with dim lighting and overpriced wine, he had been using the company's money to help fund their secret. Booking hotels on his expense card, sending gifts through work channels, paying for her travel upgrades under fake project codes. All it took was one folder of evidence. And now he was gone. No email, no exit interview, no goodbye post on LinkedIn. Just erased. A man with a sterling reputation and a corner office had been wiped off the map in under 72 hours. And Martha? She was confused, panicked, but not guilty. Not yet. She didn't connect it back to me. Because in her mind, I was still the same man I'd always been. Slow to react, forgiving, willing to work through anything. A man who meant well but didn't understand her. A man she thought she had on a leash. She was wrong. She just hadn't figured out how wrong. Not yet. That night, she was quiet. Not distant, just unsettled. The usual hum of her phone notifications was silent. She picked at her food. She kept checking her email. I could see it, the doubt beginning to spread behind her eyes, like she was trying to piece something together but couldn't find the thread. She looked up at one point and said, "Do you think people ever just snap?" I raised an eyebrow. Like emotionally? "Yeah, I guess," I said. "Pressure builds. People break. Makes sense." She nodded, then went quiet again. But I knew what she was really asking. She wasn't talking about her boss. She was talking about me. She just didn't want to say it out loud. And the truth? I hadn't snapped. I'd sharpened. There's a difference. A snap is messy, loud, desperate. But a sharpened edge is deliberate, controlled, dangerous in the right hands. She went to bed early that night, claimed she had a headache, left her half-full wine glass on the table, didn't kiss me goodnight. I stayed up, watching her phone buzz silently on the table. She didn't reach for it this time. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was strategic. She was waiting for me to ask something, to push, to prod. But I never did, because I had nothing left to ask. I already knew everything. And my move? It was already done. No confrontation. No bloodshed. Just a quiet whisper to the right person. And her castle came crashing down. Let her sit in the wreckage now. Let her try to rebuild without the man who promised her an escape from the life she said made her feel stuck. Because while she played chess in the dark, I had already flipped the board. And walked away. It started small, like most collapses do. She came home to an apartment with the fridge empty and the lights half working. The rent had gone unpaid now that her mentor was gone. The promotion she'd hinted at for months? Given to someone else. Instead of leading projects, she was reassigned to a team she used to mock. No window, no voice, no power. Instagram still saw her posting quotes about growth and resilience. But behind the scenes, she was unraveling. I filed for divorce quietly, attached every document, the photos, the messages, the receipts. She didn't contest. She couldn't. The court saw everything. I kept the house, the car, even the dog. She left with nothing. Not because I demanded it, but because she had already gambled it all. And lost. 3 months later, she texted me. "I miss how safe it felt with you." I stared at it. No anger. No sadness. Just silence. Because the safety wasn't her. It was me. I built it, protected it, and she burned it. I didn't reply.